Welcome to the PR Maven podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven, and I have been working in PR for a long time now, many decades, and I have a particular interest in personal branding, which is what makes you stand out from everyone else who does the same thing that you do and attracts people to what you have to offer. I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and a columnist for the Forbes Agency Council and Main Biz. My audiences have said that helping them think about their superpower has changed the way they think about their lives and their careers. I hope you like this episode, and I hope you'll share it with other people who might be interested. And I'm very excited about today's guest. It's my friend and colleague, Kathleen O'Heron, who's co-founder and CEO of Jynx Productions. Welcome to the PR Maven podcast, Kathleen.
Oh, thanks, Nancy. Thanks for that little intro. It's lovely to be here. I appreciate being with you.
It's nice to have you. So, Kathleen O'Heron is CEO and co-founder of Jynx Productions, a media production company based in Maine. Over the last 20 years, she has built Jynx from a husband and wife shop to one of the leading boutique production companies in New England. Jynx produces unscripted, documentary style content for TV networks, as well as corporate and private clients, content that has reached millions of people on television and across streaming platforms and social media. Prior to co-founding Jynx, Kathleen ran the global post-production department at Bloomberg Television in New York City. She was instrumental in the success of several corporate initiatives, including the effort to design and build an entirely digital workflow for the broadcast news division. But in 2005, her creative juices were calling her back to the production world. She moved her young family up to Maine and rekindled her passion for documentary filmmaking, and she has never looked back. So, Kathleen, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Um, so I think I was always drawn towards production. If there was an opportunity in school, in high school, to um, have a creative assignment rather than handing in a paper, I was always making a film instead. So it's just, something that kind of just grew up with me as I grew up. Um, in college, I was drawn to filmmaking classes, and then I took that up as my degree. And then I started working with the sociology department doing some films for them. And that kind of brought me out of narrative work into more documentary style. And then I just continued that at NYU when I did my master's degree there. And it just, one thing sort of followed another. I fell in love with the editing process during my time at NYU. It was really kind of an exciting place to really hone that, because we were using a mixture of equipment from the old, reel-to-reel sort of Steenbeck editing suites to all of the new stuff that was happening in the nonlinear space. So that really piqued my interest. And then I started getting freelance work with ABC News and other production companies, and kind of working with those production companies, I kind of learned what it takes to have a successful production company and the kind of projects that you need to have and the diversity of clients. And I also worked with a few production companies that weren't really that great, so I knew what I shouldn't be thinking about. But I think as soon as I sort of experienced that world, I kind of knew that one day I would be, setting up my own production company to work on documentaries. It was just a passion, and I just kind of put myself on that path. Every time I had an opportunity, I'd take it. Yeah,
Well, you have such a unique combination of skills because you have the documentary storytelling skills, but also the technology, not
that's
to
right.
mention your knowledge of international because you
Yeah,
worked in London and Germany, and
that's
your
right.
husband
Yeah,
is German.
that's
So
correct.
I feel that you're kind of like what you're like a needle in the haystack. You have all these skills that came together to do what you're
Yeah,
doing.
it's true. It's totally true. I have a blend of that. I think I was always technically driven, although I didn't really understand when I was younger that that was a thing. My very first computer that I owned when I was in college, I took apart because I was so curious about how it worked. And I put it all back together again, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't know, that was just something that was in me. And then but then working at Bloomberg, so I got my first opportunity for sort of a career path job when I was living in London. um, and I started working for them as a freelance editor on their sort of their news division. And at the time, the London office was just exploding. It was we had different languages being spoken. They had networks and teams of people from Italy and from Germany and from France and Spain, all sort of headquartered in the London office, making news for the Bloomberg channel in those countries. And it was a real startup kind of an atmosphere, and anything went as long as it worked. And I found my home there right away. I mean, I had a ton of ideas that I wanted to implement, and being an editor was really great there. But, I knew that I had much more to give and I could be challenged a lot more. So I started putting together proposals on how we could technically improve the editing suites and the workflow so that we could get the news out faster. And once I was on the radar as someone who could think outside of the box and wasn't afraid to try new technology, I was just given a lot of opportunities to kind of flex those muscles and have a say at the table for the team that I was developing. And then I just kind of worked up the corporate ladder, you know, met my husband. He was working on the German team. So yeah, it was that experience that gave me the confidence to sort of lean into the technical side of things, which is something that I absolutely needed to have when we set up shop up here, because we bootstrapped it from the beginning, and I had helped to create this digital newsroom workflow, and I knew what we needed to have to make that work for us and on a small scale for our production company, because most of our clients that we were working for were overseas. And I really wanted to lean into sort of digital assets because it was much easier to transfer that overseas than to keep sending tapes out.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that because in the course of my career too, when I worked at the ski resort, we used to tape ski races on 3/4 inch tapes and then make
Yeah.
duplicates of them.
Oh my
And
God.
I
Oh
would
my
actually
God.
like get in my car and drive from
Yeah,
the ski
I
resort
know.
to the ski to the
I
teams.
know. It's just crazy to think that that's how it used to work, but it totally did. And tape to tape was my mortal enemy. I hated it so much. I didn't mind so much working in film because it was very nonlinear. It made you sort of, you had to splice things in and take things out, and it felt a lot like the workflow that I'm currently in the digital workflow. So, but the tape thing, it just drove me crazy. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
Now, but you mentioned that your husband was working on the German team and he
that's
is
right.
German, and
That's
you
right.
produced a lot of documentaries about American life for the German audiences, such as you did one on the Kennedy family. Is that correct?
We've done profiles on the Bill Gates family. We did the Trump clan, the Biden clan. We call them clans because we were focusing on not only these individuals, but really their support teams and who were kind of propping them up and where those people came from. So it was kind of more geared towards that. We don't do an awful lot of historical stuff. We do a lot of documentaries that are, in the current, in the current era. Bill Gates was quite fun because we had to do a few reenactments to kind of like put together these moments that people are quite familiar with. We also focused on Elon Musk around the time that he was really beginning to put, rockets up into the sky.
Yeah.
That was pretty trippy. But yeah, we've profiled a few sort of interesting characters who, you know, the German audience knows really well. But I think our forte is really talking about, regular people. So a lot of our documentaries are focused on people who you've never met, but who have extremely interesting stories to tell. And kind of shed a light a little bit on what it's like to be in America and the kind of different opportunities you have living in this country and the things that you can do and explore and stuff like that. Yeah.
So, are the German audiences genuinely curious about life in the USA?
Yes, very curious about life in the USA. They really are. They want to know things like, what's it like to go to school here? What's it like? So we do a lot of work for a younger demographic. It's kind of the primary show that we work for and produce content for is for an audience of between, I'd say, 15 and about 35. So, it skews a little bit younger. Um, and so we do things, different topics all the time. I mean, the bear situation in Lake Tahoe, what's kind of happening in California regarding their use of new technologies to overcome homelessness and climate change issues and things like that. So we kind of run the gamut. It could be a really fluffy piece, or it could be something that's really, hard hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were during COVID, we were covering a lot of that, what was happening over here, especially in the run up to the 2020 election, focusing on Black Lives Matter and, all of the sort of tumult that was happening in that curve of time. And, the German audience especially was so curious about our American system and, what happens here. Yeah, so it's been really exciting to be able to tell those stories, and they're always through the eyes of just normal people. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kathleen, broadcast television has changed dramatically over the course of my lifetime and certainly
Indeed.
yours too. How has it
Indeed.
changed?
So, yes, the broadcast mechanism has changed, but the hunger for content has not changed. In fact, it's increased. And it seems to me that the more that's available to people, the more they want. And so the distribution mechanism has changed. It's not just available for broadcast. It's also that you can, see them over streaming channels and, all of the, and on YouTube and, all of these different access points, which means more people are watching TV, more people are engaging, and your content can be seen around the globe in a way that probably if you were just committed to regular network television, it wouldn't have as far of a reach. So I feel like the it's really more of a question of the mechanism, and that the question about content has not gone away. And luckily for us, the documentary and sort of unscripted area has blown up. People are really interested in seeing stuff that's real and unfiltered and, I love that. I mean, that's just that's my special interest and my passion. And our team is really, gone along with the ride. It's just we try and be as verite as possible. Our crews are always very small because being nimble allows you to get into situations on the fly that you wouldn't be able to if you had a large crew with a lot of equipment. So, no matter what story we're working on, we're always trying to, find an interesting angle as we're filming that we didn't think of before. And we need to be able to just kind of follow that in a way that we probably wouldn't if we had a bigger crew. And so I would say probably one residual of the fact that there's so much content out there is that an audience is much more forgiving about the quality of the content sometimes. And it doesn't have to be this beautiful cinematic masterpiece. And I'm not saying that our work is like subpar in that way. It's just you can get away with a lot of things. So sometimes we'll throw in an iPhone shot, if that helps tell our story in a way that we couldn't get with a regular camera because maybe we weren't allowed in the space or something like that. So
Right.
it's allowed us to really just kind of, envelop all of the new technologies that are out there and just throw the book at the project.
Well, you mentioned looking at stories from different angles, and sometimes publicists or PR people, because this is a show for PR people.
That's
Um,
right.
Sometimes good publicists might help you find a good angle, but I know after having spoken with you over the time we've known each other, I know you get a lot of bad pitches. So, what advice would you give to a PR person who's trying to suggest a topic or a story to you?
So, for us to, we work on commission. So we pitch things to our clients, whether it's in the broadcast space or whether it's in the corporate space or whatever. We have to put together a pitch and get it to a place where they like it enough that they commission it. And so thinking of things that sell. So a conversation between myself and a PR person might go something like, my the PR person might say, I have a great client. They do this really unusual, they have this really unusual business, and their story is super unique. And I would be asking questions like, is it a universal story? Is it something that everybody can relate to? Is it really niche? Is it long enough and in depth enough for us to be able to get a good amount of minutes out of it? Because really we want to deliver, projects that are either around 25 minutes or around 50 minutes to our clients. And so, I would be asking a lot of questions like that. And so I think for you to keep in the back of your mind for any PR agents who are listening, it's, really to think about the story that you're trying to tell for your client. And, is it going to sound a little salesy? Is there a way that we can make it a human interest story? And we've done a lot of those, and we can do it. It's just a very careful conversation that has to be had so that the story sounds authentic, and not contrived and not salesy. Even if you're, working for a corporate entity and you're putting together a documentary for them about, maybe their corporate culture or the history of the business or something like that. It really needs to be driven by the humanity of the organization so that it tells a story that people want to watch. We're very lucky doing both corporate work and doing work for television, that with the television pieces, we are able to see the viewer reactions. So we know when people like to tune in and tune off. And that really helps to inform us when we're doing sort of projects for more corporate organizations, because we know what keeps people entertained and we know what's going to be an absolute, like, turn the channel right now.
A bomb.
Yes, but that's that's information that we have that is very useful to PR people, because I feel like it's not information that you often get. And it helps to inform us on all of the work that we do, you know.
I'll also add from my own experience that when you're pitching someone in television, it needs to be visual. You need to
Visual.
talk about what the visuals will be.
Yeah.
And
Well, we can also, we can also help with that, because
yeah,
sometimes we can help sort of think about the visuals, and different ways to tell these stories. But yeah, it helps if you can think of that in advance, and if you have any kind of ability to get historical archive material, and it can be from the people you're representing, from their own personal archive, or it could be, something that's kind of more in the public space. But yeah,
yeah,
thinking of the visuals, and is it a compelling visual story, that is key.
yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break now. We'll be back with more from Kathleen O'Heron. But I don't want people to forget that as a listener of the PR Maven podcast, you can get the first chapter of my book called Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand for free by going to prmaven.com/giveaway and sign up for our email list to receive that first chapter. So we'll be back in just a moment after a short video break.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow. And so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients, so it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
Again, you can get a free chapter of my book by visiting prmaven.com/giveaway. And I'd like to welcome you back. And today we're talking with Kathleen O'Heron from Jynx Productions on the PR Maven podcast. And the podcast is also available on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we try to be everywhere that you are. So Kathleen, what is the difference between print and broadcast media? You've worked in both.
I have. I would say print, well, first of all, let me say both of them require an awful lot of preparation and research. And I think that broadcast allows you, because it's a visual medium, broadcast allows you really to be, it's more of a team effort, maybe, and maybe I'm stepping on some toes by saying that. But I feel like you have a lot more voices in the mix when you're putting something, when you're creating a video and putting a film out on TV, because you've got all of the crew, you've got all of the people who are doing, the research and all of the pre-production and the production, and then it goes through the post-production process. And there are so many cooks in the kitchen that you get this great diversity of opinion. And for documentary filmmaking, I think that is useful. You have so many perspectives and input along the way that you can really turn on a dime if something isn't working, or if something is is working, then you can build further into that. But I think both print and broadcast media, I feel like we are talking to the same audiences. So you have to be as engaging as one another. You know, um, you can't get away with anything in either one of those mediums. You have to be thorough, you have to be factual. If you're going to be taken seriously by your audience, you have to have all of that. And I think because we're a visual medium, we can be a little bit more creative with lighting and sound and, bringing more emotion like to the viewer at the moment, and kind of allowing a viewer to see what's inside the head of somebody else who's putting together, the broadcast project. I think is really kind of interesting. You can see the world. Like, for example, Avatar. If that was, if you're going on the book, every single person reading that book is going to have a different vision of what Avatar looks like. But you see it on film and you have kind of this collective viewing experience where everybody's seeing the world in the same way, seeing the same colors and seeing, the same actors and the same scenes, presented in a way that is kind of a little bit more of a collective experience visually.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that print and broadcast are complementary,
Absolutely.
and people who have curious minds, they're going to
Yes,
want to consume all kinds of content.
I completely agree with you. I think the visual medium is just so interesting in a way, and especially now with sort of AI technology, where a creator can really show an audience what it is they were envisioning, and I think that's really special.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
Hmm.
I do love the fact that you can be so creative. And speaking of creativity, what kind of projects do you have going on right now?
Oh gosh, we've got some fun things in the mix. We are working on a couple longer format documentaries. One of them is about sort of some of the sort of secret, un, untouristed parts of New York. And then we're also working on a project about Washington, D.C. in the run up to the election. Um, and just kind of what happens in an American election, and how the process works. And next year is going to be a pretty interesting year for filmmakers for sure.
Yeah,
But we're also working on smaller things. We've just filmed with this company that makes robotic taxi cabs that are roaming around San Francisco. So we got to ride in one of those. It was quite an experience to sit in a car that doesn't have a driver in the driver's seat, especially in a city like San Francisco where there's a lot of activity around every intersection.
yeah,
So that was pretty trippy and kind of fun. We're filming a project about how Oscar statuettes are made.
cool.
So that's pretty cool. We get some behind the scenes stuff. Um, Gosh, what other things are in the works? Where we filmed at a macadamia farm in Hawaii, and so we're putting that project together. And we also did a project while we were there about um, the youth in Hawaii and some of the exceptional people out there who are having an impact, even though they're young. Talking about climate change and what life is like on a remote island like Maui that's just been devastated by that horrible fire. Um, it there's always something happening here at Jinx, and it's always different. Every project is different from the last, and it's really fun that way. It's kind of like opening like a whole new present almost every few weeks, and we get to unwrap it and really dig in and play with new toys, and learn new things about new people, and it's fantastic. We've met some really amazing people along the way.
Well, it's obvious that you're passionate about what you do, and I'm sure that that's reflected in the work you produce.
I hope so.
So,
Definitely love what I do for sure.
yeah. Yeah, I feel blessed to love what I do too. So I think there's so many people that work every day and don't really
I
like it. They're
know.
just like counting down to their retirement. I feel so sorry for those
I
people.
know, I know, I know, I know. And you know, it's nice because we have a small team and they're all sort of on the same page. They're all adventurers and explorers and very curious about the world and the people in it. So we're lucky to have a group of people who are all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So describe the production process from the time you get a new project through the time of broadcast.
Oh, okay. So the process starts with either a request from the client for content. They might say, we need to fill some holes, come up with some ideas, and send us some pitches. But we also, every week, we also throw pitches into a big bucket that they look through and decide whether they want to pursue them or not. So it's a constant stream of ideas that we trawl through all kinds of media. We're looking at print, we're looking at films, we're looking at news, and we're trying to find ideas that pique our interest enough that we think this is something that's pitchable. We read a lot of blogs. We're just trying to find unusual people in all areas of the United States who have an interesting story to tell that we can present. So that's how the broadcast sort of projects get started. Once they've been commissioned, it's a question of going into pre-production, and then we have to have a lot of conversations with the people that we want to film with. Once we have buy-in from them, then we need to talk about locations and secure those kinds of logistics. We need to we have a lot of conversations with the people we're going to be filming with, because that kind of informs us as far as how the narrative arc is going to progress. So we want to have an idea of what the film is going to look like at the end before we even start filming. So they'll let us know where we can film, what kind of parts of their lives we can film, how the story is going to kind of unfold. And once we feel like we're on sort of the same page, then we start talking about dates that we can get out there and film with them. This all happens in a space of about 3 weeks from the time it was commissioned. And then the filming will happen depending on the length of the project, it could be anywhere from a 1-day shoot to, a 2-week shoot. So that varies. But once we have everything in the can, then we start going through all the media, and that's kind of where I come into play. That's where my favorite space is, in the edit room. So I don't often go on shoots with the team. Instead, I monitor all of the footage as it's being filmed. I do that digitally, and I start working on pulling transcripts and finding all of the best little nuggets that are happening. And sometimes as they're filming, I'm seeing what they're doing. So if I feel like, oh, they've missed something that we could really use in the edit, then I can communicate that back with the producer. So that's really who's on scene. And that's oftentimes my husband, Johannes. So that's quite cool. Yeah, and then they come back, and Johannes and I start working, or if it's another producer, we start working on building out the script and seeing how the footage kind of works with the script. Sometimes they have to kind of change their perspective if we didn't quite get what we needed for one angle of the story. We'll probably look at things. I think my perspective comes in because I'm looking at the material with what we have versus what we hoped to have. So the producer has an ideal version of what they want the story to be like, and while I try to make that happen in the edit, oftentimes it's a question of, oh well, that would have been good, but we didn't get enough media to kind of cover that story correctly, or it's kind of boring actually. Let's go with this because this is a lot more interesting. And so it kind of evolves a lot in the edit, and I really enjoy that. It's like putting together a puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I think the average viewer would be surprised at how complex the process is.
Yeah, I mean
Yep.
the post-production process alone contains so many different phases, from like logging all of the media and looking at it to putting together kind of an assemble of what the good stuff is, and then you're working towards a rough cut based on the script, but that goes through so many iterations and then back and forth with the client. And once you have an approval from the client, you've got to then you know, do the finishing work, which is also like a whole skill set in itself with color work and sound design to make it broadcastable. So we do everything from sourcing the idea, putting together the production, editing it, but also finessing it so that really all our client in Germany has to do is put one of their voice actors on, they read our script and they put their voice on our video and then they pop it out to air. So often we'll deliver something that 3 days later is on air.
Wow,
It's
that's amazing.
crazy.
Yeah, it
That is
is
crazy.
crazy.
But it's kind of fun because then it goes out to air. We get feedback about, if the audience liked it or not, if the
Yeah,
network liked it or not. And, then we can just move on to the next thing. So, there's always a pipeline spilling
right,
through. And
exactly.
that's not even talking about the corporate work, which is also something that I absolutely adore because, it's a whole different, a lot of the corporate work that we have comes from the connections that Johannes and I had made at Bloomberg. And so it's often tied to sort of the financial industry. But we also work with tourism boards and other organizations who they have stories that they want to tell. They have new initiatives that they want to explore and to broadcast out to their people. So, we do a lot of work for those organizations when it's sort of more non-scripted material. And I love doing that because I feel like it's always for a good cause, and that's something I feel very passionate about.
Yeah. And you also do documentaries for families, right?
Right.
For
Yeah. Yeah.
individuals.
That's right. So, families, often these are families with sort of they've established themselves in America. They're often from other parts of the world, and they've made a name for themselves. Maybe their family came over 100 years ago, and they've really become quite established in the fields of medicine or in banking or something like that, and they have a really big impact on America, and have a historic story to tell. And so, we sort of fell into producing these documentaries for them. They're sort of legacy heirloom projects. Often, the people we film with have a sort of a footprint on the internet, and it's often telling a story that is maybe not accurate or leaves out quite a lot of personal information that they feel they want to give to the generations moving forward so that the following generations understand where the family came from, how they set down roots, and what their story, what their founding story was. So that generations going forward are not just looking on the internet to find out what their family legacy is, because
Yeah.
oftentimes it's not representative of the real. Yeah, so it gives them an opportunity to sort of like have their own say in how their future generations understand where they came from. And I love those projects. Those are, really exciting.
My own great grandfather was in the neon sign business, and he owned
Yeah.
a sign company called C.I. Brink in Boston that built the Citgo sign at Fenway Park.
Oh, wow,
And
crazy.
I've heard anecdotes, and there was an article in the Boston Globe about it at one point, but I would just so love, because I never met
Yeah.
him. He was my great
Right,
grandfather. He was gone before I was
right.
born, and I would
Well,
just give anything to be able to watch a
yeah,
documentary. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's
It's,
families should take charge, like
yeah.
get these stories videoed or produced while the people are still
Mm,
alive, because
I
they do
think
have
so.
incredible stories to tell.
Yes, and a lot of times the elder generations are the ones with the knowledge, and they've been busy building their lives and not necessarily finding ways to document it. And as they get older, the younger generations want the information from them. So that is something that we've been able to help document for some families, and it's something I'd love to do more because I absolutely adore working on those projects. I always learn something so interesting about people that you just don't hear about, you don't know about, but they're there and they're helping to shape America in a way.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
really I love that.
Yeah. So cool. So, Kathleen, is there a book, a podcast, or an app that has helped you in your career, your life, and why?
Oh my goodness. This one I knew was going to come, and I have so many. So I think the things that impact me on a day-to-day basis, like I'm a news junkie, so I can't help listening to anything in the news. I want to know what's happening. I want to know from various perspectives. I want to know from various countries. So I'll listen to the news that's coming out of France. I'll listen to news from England, as well as from the States, because I just like to kind of, experience a broader world. I listen to a lot of Bloomberg actually, because they come from all over the globe and they have, international stories. And I do sort of that hearing the stories that are happening around the world to people really sort of impacts the kind of perspective of the world that I have. And I think that informs like just about every project. The things that I'm interested in filming, the stories that we're interested in telling, that's kind of probably at least a little piece of that comes from a broader interest in what's happening around the globe. But having said that, there are so many films that I have watched over the years that have impacted me in so many ways. Films that are probably more narrative than documentary, but they have given me, um, they have impacted my imagination to be able to see things from different people's perspectives, and in a way that you probably would get from reading different books. But for me, it's the visual. I love to read books when I can, but the older I get, the more I find that I just read the same paragraph 25 times, and then I can't. And then I put the book down, and I'm like, is there a movie version? So I do. I've always leaned towards film, cinematic experiences, and I love going to movies and watching really good films. So I would say more than anything, films have probably
What's your favorite
impacted me.
film?
I adore anything by Jane Campion. She made the film back in '93, I think it was, The Piano, and that's a film that I absolutely adore. Anything by Scorsese. I mean, I love Scorsese, and I can't wait to see the film that he has out now. I
The
haven't seen it
Flowers of
yet.
the Poison Moon.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I
haven't seen
saw
it.
that. I saw that a few weeks ago, and yeah,
Mm,
it is amazing. It
yeah.
really it gets you in your soul.
Yeah, yeah. But I love the old films too, like, the Frank Capra movies and
It's a
Douglas Sirk
Wonderful Life.
movies, and
Yeah, I actually just watched that one too.
I love all of it. So, I could, to me it's just, if I could spend all day every day just being inside of a movie, I would love to do
Well, you're obviously
that.
passionate about so many things. And if any of our viewers or listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can reach out?
I mean, you can tool around our website and you'll find me. It's jynxproductions.com. But if you want to get in touch with me directly, just email info@jynxproductions.com and they all come to me.
All right. And that's Jynx, Jynx
NX
Productions with an
Productions.
S on the
Yeah,
end.
camp. That's right. That's right. People to this day ask me, what in the world inspired you to call your production company Jynx? And All I can say is every production is jinxed. You just have to figure out a way to make it work anyway and make it great.
Maybe you should have called it unjinxed.
No. Yeah, but then that would give the false illusion that we don't
Yeah.
have any jinxed productions.
Well, Kathleen, this has
Oh,
been such a great conversation. I
it's gone
really
so fast.
appreciate
I
it.
know. I love talking to you. It was so great, but it whizzed by.
I
But
know.
it was,
It
oh,
always does.
it's always a fun time with you, Nancy.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks
Kathleen.
for having me.
Well, thank you. And I know that everybody in PR Maven Nation is going to enjoy listening to our conversation.
Great. I hope they reach out.
Yeah, I hope so too.
All
So
right. Take
everybody
care.
in PR Maven Nation, have a great day. And if you have any questions or comments for me, you can email me at nancy@prmaven.com. So have a great day, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the Skills and Games section to find and enable the PR Maven podcast flash briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.